Critchley. I've been working for Football Daily for about 3 years, and I'm a presenter, a scriptwriter, and voiceover artist, I suppose.
Brilliant, thank you. So I just want to start off by asking you, what attracted you to broadcast media and football specifically?
Well, I was always a massive football fan from a very early age. It was actually Football Manager that specifically got me into football. I remember being quite young, and me and my brother would do joint careers, and because he was a bit older, I wasn't allowed to actually do it in terms of having the mouse and keyboard. I had to scout for him, so I would like look up players in newspapers, magazines, or whatever. That got me interested in football. Being a football fan, pretty hardcore football fan since about the age of 6. And then broadcast media sort of came to me when I was at uni. I basically decided I didn't want to do anything sort of standard. I didn't want to go into anything construction. Didn't want to go into finance, banking, whatever, law. Wanted to get into presenting because it was always something that really interested me. And then just decided to follow it really. And I've got quite lucky along the way. I did a master's in broadcast journalism at City University in London. And that gave me the sort of skills to start applying for jobs, and then got lucky enough to get one at Football Daily and been there ever since.
Oh, that's brilliant. And you went to Soccer AM for a bit, didn't you, I read? How was that?
I did, yeah. I did a week there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, actually. It's quite funny now bumping into... So I bumped into Tubes a couple of times. We played football against them since. So it was quite funny bumping into them. It was a great week. They're quite open at Sky. They'll give a lot of people opportunities to come in for a week and work on the production of the show, do some research for them. I remember I was also clipping out goals and saves for other Sky Sports programmes as well. So it was all quite exciting. It was all quite new at the time. Down in Osterley in West London, exciting getting a buzz off it, seeing how production is on, for a live show. And then the Saturday was absolutely mental. You're up at like 5:30, the show starts so early, but you get such a rush, and then you're all done by 10:11, and that was the end of the week. But yeah, the team there were great. I remember particularly Helen Chamberlain, who was there at the time, gave me a lot of sort of helpful tips at the end. Fenners was very nice as well. Tubes, Rocket, the whole crew really.
Oh, fantastic! It's like something like little village, isn't it? At Sky in London. It's really weird when you go onto it. I went last year, and just being around that sort of place, do you reckon that helped you gain a bit of experience what it's like in broadcast media and the speed and intensity that you need to work at?
Yeah, for sure. I saw sort of how much work went into... Well, I think Soccer AM was slightly longer back then. I can't exactly remember how long the show was, but they needed to fill 2 hours, and they try and make it as high paced as possible, as many guests, as many features. So you see just how much work goes into it and how hard they have to work, and how late they work in the week as well. Everyone just sees the show and think it's just it's just guys having a bit of a laugh, but there's so much that goes into it behind the scenes, and it's a really impressive show in its sort of longevity, how long it's been able to stay relevant. Particularly with media changing so much over the last few years. So yeah, hats off to them. And it was great to sort of see the inner workings of Sky, and now I've been able to go back there a few times and work on the Football Social, which is filmed at Sky in the same buildings as well. So that's been quite fun. It's been a bit of a journey with Sky actually in a way.
I was going to touch on the partnership that now forms between Sky and Football Daily, and how much has that been a boost for everyone at Football Daily, including yourself?
Yeah, massive. Well, I actually was hired in 2017, and I think it went through in September 2017, that was, and I think it went through in the summer of 2017, which allowed them to have a much bigger budget to then hire more people, upgrade our studios. Beforehand, they were just shooting in this really horrid loft, which smelt really weird. It wasn't good at all. So it gave them basically an opportunity to upgrade, and without that takeover they wouldn't have been able to hire me, so I'm very grateful to that. And then we've also been able to get more access to not only Premier League footage of managers and that sort of thing to clip up and put in our shows, but the occasional bit of one-on-one access with players and that sort of thing, which brings our content to a sort of new level. So couldn't be more grateful for that Sky takeover really.
And since your time working at Football Daily, would you be able to talk us through your roles as you've gone on through the last 3 years?
Yeah, sure. So I started as I think it was called a junior production assistant, which was basically I did have some experience with presenting from sort of uni. I'd done a radio show when I was at uni. I presented a couple of fashion shows, charity fashion shows, that sort of thing. But I didn't have that much experience. My master's got a bit more, so I was hired as a sort of junior presenter, but mainly a script writer, really. Because my undergraduate degree, I went to Durham, was international relations, and that gave me quite a good grounding in sort of how to form an argument, and just general writing, really. So I was hired as a writer, and then within about 3 months I was featuring more and more sort of on screen, and then got sort of promoted from, they then called it a junior predator, which is not a good name. But that is a production editor, or a producer editor, I think it is. But yeah, if I'd been offered that role to begin with, I think I would have run a mile. I didn't want to be called a junior predator at any stretch. So I was a junior predator for a while, and now I am the senior producer of Euro Football Daily. So Football Daily, as you know, yes, it's their sister channel with about 375,000 subscribers, and whereas Football Daily, we'd aim for sort of 100,000 views per video. On Euro Football Daily, we're aiming for 50,000, although with the current sort of situation, that's taken a bit of a hit recently on both channels. But so that was since last February time. So been over a year in my current role as senior producer for Euro Football Daily, and that's basically I'm sort of overseer of all content, titles, thumbs, alongside with the rest of the senior management team. And sort of overall strategy for the channel, which has been like a really fantastic experience, and something to be so well. I'm not boasting, but we're all quite a young team. But at 26, to be managing people, to be in charge of like a bit of where the channel's going is quite exciting, I think, at this stage.
Yeah, definitely. And I promise I won't just clip up a bit where you said I was a junior predator for a few years. I won't just share that.
I'd appreciate that.
Well, this is going to be the first video interview that's going to go up on a new platform that myself and a few other sports journalism students are forming in Sunderland called Route 1. And with your experience in an online media football platform, what advice would you give, not just to ourselves, but to others looking to start something similar?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well done you guys for taking that first step. I think the most important thing to do is just to back yourselves, really. So to be able to have the confidence to make that first step, and really go for it. And then I think it is really about determining what the sort of, before you start producing content, you really want to understand what you're trying to, what your end goal is, what you're trying to aim, what is your niche in the market, because every man and his dog or woman can create a football channel, but what is it that's going to separate you? So it could be you cover clubs that other people don't. It could be you cover clubs in an individual way. You like Football Daily, you're particularly based around stats. You're particularly interested in stories, whatever. So you find your niche, and then on YouTube, I can only really speak for YouTube, but it all comes down to the title of your videos and the thumbnail, because you can have the best content with the funniest people or the most informed people in the world, but no one's going to click on it unless you make it attractive to look at. Or clickable, really. So we try and stay away from clickbait where possible, but there's a certain degree where that you've got to cover certain clubs have a bigger online fan base, certain players have a bigger following online, so definitely try and have that in mind, and go from there, really. But I also, key is to not really care what people think to a massive degree. If you're getting heavily criticized, if you're getting trolled on personal things like your appearance or the way you speak or whatever, largely ignore it. I mean, if people are making constructive criticism about your football content, that's a different story, but there's always people online that are wanting to take people down a peg, particularly when they see other people succeeding or doing what they want to do. So develop a reasonable thick skin. I think we've all had to at Football Daily over the years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that last point, because I'm a big fan of Football Daily and Euro Football Daily personally, and just some of the comments on the videos, I can't wrap my head around what would just bring someone to think, oh yeah, that's just an acceptable and all right thing to post underneath someone else's work.
I mean, it's a joke. I mean, you see it's so much. It's so sad. I mean, even today I was looking on Twitter and Ian Wright shared some messages he'd got from from like a teenage boy
It's
just being
disgusting.
horrifically racist, and you're just like, what gives you the right to even think that? Let alone mess it. It is bizarre. Anyway,
Exactly.
so yeah, try not to take it too personally.
Yeah. And so you film a lot of different style of videos of Football Daily and Euro Football Daily. You've got your Stat Wars, your Continental Club, your Sunday Vibes, and I've seen a couple of Chris's one-on-ones recently he's been doing from home, which have been really good. Really enjoyed the RB Leipzig one he did the other week. Well, I'm not sure if that was a one-on-one, but he did a video on RB Leipzig. I'm sure he did.
Yeah, no, he does.
Yeah. And what is your favourite style of video to film?
Well, I've always been a bit of a chatterbox, really. So I'd say it's probably the talk shows, the Continental Club. Been lucky enough to host that for about a year now, so I've really enjoyed doing that. I always enjoy featuring on Sunday Vibes, particularly when it's in the pub. There's something quite fun about going to a different location. And then I think our live content's really good as well. I always enjoy doing the total footballs for the Champions League that we do. They've been pretty successful in the past. We've been really lucky to cover some absolutely awesome games. We did the Liverpool Barcelona. I know that was a football social in the end, but we did the Spurs Man City last year in the Champions League quarters final. We did Spurs Ajax in the semi final as well. But I can't be too picky. I mean, even featuring on a top 10 is good fun. Stat Wars is always a laugh. Yeah, I really enjoy featuring on most of it, to be honest. But yeah, I'd definitely go the talk show. Sunday Vibes and Continental Club would probably be the pinnacle for me.
Brilliant. And moving more in towards football itself rather than what you do covering football, you're a Sunderland fan.
I am indeed, yeah.
Many people not be able to tell that by the accent. So just talk about your young memories as a Sunderland fan, please.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a bit random, or at least sounds a bit random, but my granddad used to work for Sunderland in the 1980s, 80s and 70s, I think. So there was a family link there, and my uncle was then a big fan of Sunderland, and he passed that down to us. My dad didn't care so much about football. He'd follow Sunderland, but wasn't too bothered. But so it's mainly me and my brother, and now just sort of mainly me. My brother's now in America, so it's me really holding up the Sunderland side. But yeah, early memories of a Sunderland fan were actually pretty positive, really, because I was born in '94, so our sort of heyday, as it were, in the early 2000s was some of my earliest memories, really. And then, yeah, it's been a pretty tough ride, to say the least, particularly the last couple of years. But I wouldn't change it. You can't change your club. You can't change your allegiance through thick and thin. And yeah, I'll be absolutely devastated if the League One season's abandoned, because we looked up until the last couple of games before the postponement that we were getting it together. So yeah, it's pretty worrying. But yeah, Sunderland, it's been an amazing bond that I've created with the club, but mainly through hardship, really. Like, I remember in the Premier League, you'd just be absolutely delighted if you got a win, which is the weirdest concept. But it made it all the more special. I remember when we beat Chelsea 3-0 at Stamford Bridge, like all those victories over Newcastle. They just live that much longer in your memory because of the sort of crap you've had to go through.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure half of the initial Route 1 team that there is now are Sunderland fans, 3 out of the 6. So I think a lot of them would agree with you. The Newcastle fan might be not too keen, but it'll be all right.
Fair enough.
But sticking with Sunderland, and you touched on this season and the current state of football, I don't think anyone's really in a position to say what should or shouldn't definitely happen, because it's just such unprecedented times. But there has been the news that came out in the last couple of days over the financial situation at the club. What are your just thoughts on reading that?
Just major disappointment, really. I watched, obviously, as we all did, the second series of Sunderland Till I Die. Stuart Donald, I thought, came across like fantastically well. Bit naive at times, particularly over the Will Grigg transfer, and ending up paying close to, I think it was 4 times what he initially said was his benchmark, which just showed his sort of naivety in it. But he was so determined to get a striker, and I was like, oh, I mean, it's your money. But as it turns out, it wasn't his money at all. It was the club. So every sort of good bit of feeling that I had for him, I found Charlie Methven slightly annoying, to say the least. But yeah, far too Brentish. And like I appreciated his enthusiasm, but I sometimes felt like the way he dealt with his staff at times was pretty patronising. But yeah, just absolutely just bemused about this Stuart Donald news. I didn't think he had it in him. And to wager it so heavily on going up last year, and again, if we don't go up this year, which is by no means guaranteed, then the club could be in really difficult financial position with no potential owners. I mean, I thought I smelt a fish, to be honest, when all that Dell stuff came out, and it looked like they were going for a full takeover, and then in the end it just turned out to be a pretty tiny investment on the grand scale of things. I was a bit like, what's going on here? So I'm a little bit concerned, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's disappointing to see such a big supported club, not just a big club in general. It's like 30,000 every week in League One, near enough now, and then they broke the record last season against Bradford on Boxing Day for the home attendance at League One. And you just, even as a neutral, and I know I've lived there, but I really want to see that club back on its feet. And as a Sheffield United supporter, I grew up watching Sheffield United in League One, so I know how annoying that league is. We were there for 6 years. But come out of it now.
There's just so many games.
Yeah, so many games, yeah. And even though it's odd, it's a downturn definitely for the club. Do you have a specific good memory from your time in League One these last 2 years? Is there a game that stands out as, do you know what, this might be alright?
I went to MK Dons away in, I think that was early February, and it wasn't a great game. We dominated 1-1-0 through a Gooch goal, really nice goal. And in the away end, I took two of the boys from FD. I took Sonny and Mike Atkins, who spends most of his time behind screen, but you might know of them. And the Sunderland fans, I mean, MK Dons has an atrocious atmosphere, to say the least. It was about 10% full, if that. But the Sunderland end was packed, and got that goal in about the 80th minute. Flares were going off, and I was just like... And that was when it was starting to turn under Parkinson as well. Mm. And we looked like we were really getting it together. And yeah, that was a sort of feel-good moment. On the opposite end of that, going to Gillingham by myself, because no one wanted to come, in December, on a pretty cold day. It didn't rain, luckily, but on a pretty cold day, and there's no cover in Gillingham either, so you're just battered by the wind. And we lost 1-0 in the last minute. That was pretty bleak. So yeah, good and bad from League One, to say the least.
Yeah, it's not a perfect league, I think is fair to say.
No.
And just one thing to pretty much finish off on is, during these times, how creatively challenged has the team been, and how much of a challenge has it been to put content together while you're all working from home?
Yeah. Well, to begin with, it was a bit challenging, getting everyone home. Sounds really simple, but we've all got these, pretty big Macs in the office. We had to split up who took cameras, who took mics, that sort of thing. I was actually self-isolating on that day because I thought I'd come into contact with someone with coronavirus. It turns out I hadn't. So I don't have a camera, so I'm doing everything via webcam, which is all right. They then got, mics delivered out to the people that were doing voiceovers, so that's what you can hear here. It's actually quite a good standard of a mic, which you can get at any hardware store or whatever. But in terms of the content, that is quite challenging because there's just a severe lack of news. The transfers, thank God, are still going ahead, so we've got transfers to speculate on. But yeah, in terms of news, like our shows like We Need to Talk, which goes out on a Friday on Football Daily, where Joe effectively rounds up the biggest news in football. There is no news. You've got to be quite creative on that. We've had to, think of new ideas. We're hoping to create a new podcast for Euro Football Daily. We filmed a pilot for a new quiz show today. Just ways to get around it, really. Although in some of the European leagues look like they're coming back in the next couple of weeks. At least Germany starts again this weekend. So we'll have another ERU coming out probably on Monday. Or at least the following week. So yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge. But I think it just comes down to good communication. And the team will work really hard to try and keep the content coming. And actually, vast majority of people on YouTube, you say that you see some unkind comments, and you do, but the most are just so grateful that we're putting out the work, and we couldn't be more grateful for people watching us as well, because everyone's competing for attention right now in the online space, and so for people to take 10-20 minutes of their day to watch 2 videos every day from Football Daily and Euro Football Daily does just mean a lot, really.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I will just ask one more. How are you coping within yourself during isolation? It's a tough time for everyone, but how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's very kind of you to ask, Harvey. I'd say I'm just existing, really. I wouldn't say I'm like thriving or really struggling. I wouldn't want to make out that I'm having it particularly difficult. I'm at my girlfriend's house in Brixton. We're living with 2 other people, one of which is my girlfriend's housemate and then her boyfriend. So there's 4 of us. I miss my family up in Scotland a fair bit and my brother in New York, but generally doing okay. I mean, for a sport addict, I found it quite difficult. The weekends seem especially long at the moment. Not even with anything really to watch. Got back into Football Manager as well, until I realised that I'd played, because it shows how long you've played in the game, which is just the worst feature. And I played 7 days and 9 hours, and I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. So I've had to call it quits on that. But yeah, no, it's been all right otherwise. What about yourself?
I'm doing really well, thank you for asking. And on that Football Manager thing, it's sort of like after a night, like a weekend of drinking at uni, just looking at the empty beer and spirit bottles on the side of your table, he's looking at that like, oh, you've played X amount of days of Football Manager in the last week.
For sure, you're just like, why? Yeah, exactly.
I finally bit the bullet yesterday and shaved my head, hence the cap. So,
yeah.
So
I like it.
Yeah, it's
I'm
not
a big fan
completely
of the buzz cap.
even. Yeah, it's worked out better than I thought it would, to be fair. But
Nice.
just thank you so much for joining us again. Can't wait to get this put out and get people listening to it. I'm sure they'll really enjoy it, and can't wait to see what you and the lads have got on the pipeline for Football Daily and Euro Football Daily as well.
Absolute pleasure, Harvey. You've been a gent. Thanks.